What is up, you guys? Teller checking in for UFC Vegas 82. We got a middleweight matchup in the main event between one of the more, what should I call him? One of the, I wouldn't say up-and-coming fighters in the middleweight division. Maybe one of the dark horses in the division, a fighter that is really showing to be a threat to the title, has a lot of momentum behind him in Brendan Allen. And then he's taking on a fighter in Paul Craig, who has had some huge victories up in the light heavyweight division. Just recently came down to the middleweight division and had some success. So he's looking to steal all that momentum from Brendan Allen here. I like this fight. It's an exciting fight, but let's be clear. This is a small card. We got a couple fun fights. Michael Morales, the undefeated up-and-coming star, taking on Jake Matthews, a fighter that's grown up in the UFC. Jordan Leavitt taking on Chase Hooper. Stylistically, that's going to be a very fun fight. Payton Talbott, 6-0, so green, so young, coming off that Dana White's Contender Series win, but a fighter that has a lot of promise. So, again, just some fun fights overall, but not the most stacked of cards. We got a lot of fights to talk about here. Unfortunately, we did lose one of the better fights on the card in Christian Leroy Duncan, taking on Cesar Almeida, I believe his name was, the kickboxer who came in and had a huge victory on DWCS and just got the contract. Unfortunately, that fight's off. But again, we'll start this card. We'll start this card at the bottom, work our way up to the top. We got timestamps here. We're coming off another profitable event, a huge profitable event. Go check out the recap of UFC 295, where we profited 6.93 units, where we continue slaying these cards. The last 6 months have been ridiculous. All right, so I'm looking to keep that momentum going into this card. You guys know the routine. If you want to work with me, shoot me an email, a DM on Instagram or Twitter. I'll give you my pricing. You guys work with me, and you will make some good money this upcoming weekend. I like the spots that we have available for this card. All right, guys, please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch me on all my social media. Let's start this thing up.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
Kicking the card off, we head over to the featherweight division, where we have Lucas Alexander, the Brazilian, taking on the Indonesian Jeka Saragih. If you guys remember Jeka, he was on that Road to UFC series. He had some success there. He is a striker first and foremost, and in fact, he is lacking very much with his grappling, as we saw in his UFC debut, where he was really taken down and beaten up by Anshul Jubli. Now, that loss is looking really bad right now also because Jubli looked horrible when he actually faced off against legitimate competition in his next fight there. So that loss even looks worse. A very padded record does Saragih have. He's a fun fighter to watch on the feet, though. He's a fun striker. He's a guy that showboats. You know, he will entertain us. He'll have his head out there. He'll be sticking his tongue out and doing all that type of stuff. And don't get it twisted. He has skills on the feet. This is a fighter that has been training, Muay Thai for a long time. He's very comfortable there. Has that typical Thai style. He's just playing around it there. He's very light on his feet, He's a fun fighter to watch, but he is lacking in a major way when we're talking about his overall MMA skill set. Now, luckily enough for him here, he's fighting a fighter in Lucas Alexander who has showcased that his striking is his bread and butter. That's what he likes to go to. In fact, when he fought on Dana White's Contender Series in his second to most recent fight, he actually showed that he's kind of lacking a little bit with his grappling, where he got submitted by Joanderson Brito very early in that fight. Bounced back with the victory over Steven Peterson. I believe Steven Peterson was just going at it with Dylan Dennis at that event that just took place recently over in New York, UFC 295. Steven Peterson, a tough dude, but a guy that's lacking defensively in the feet very much. And I was a little surprised that Alexander couldn't really make an impact in the fight, maybe get a stoppage. I don't know. But Peterson is a tough dude, so we won't hold him to the fire there, but we will cut to the chase here. Stylistically, this actually favors Jeka a little bit more so compared to fighting other fighters that will go out there and just completely outclass him. I really believe that if he fights any fighters in the UFC that have any type of grappling in their back pocket, they will go out there and finish him. That being said, I still think Lucas Alexander, even though he hasn't proven that he's that type of guy, he may very likely go out there and do that. I think that we see Lucas Alexander possibly change levels and maybe try to work some jiu-jitsu down on Jeka. That's how bad Jeka is down there. Lucas Alexander will have a 4-inch reach advantage. He's almost 3 inches taller. I think that he is the better athlete. He has so many things going for himself. And let me also be clear. We talked about Jeka striking and whatnot. Well, Lucas Alexander is a striker as well. He's a very talented striker, and he probably has the edge with the striking as well. So I hope this fight plays out to be a fun one. This dude Jeka is a funny dude. His idol is Conor McGregor, but he just I don't think that he has the skill set to hang around in the UFC. In fact, I think he takes this loss and then he will dissipate from the octagon, and I don't know where he goes next. He has the personality and all that. And I mean, if you want to say anything in a positive sense, he's only 28 years old. His last fight took place like 7 months ago or so. So obviously he is continuously working on his takedown defense and his get-up game and all that, but I just don't see it being sharpened up enough. And again, Lucas Alexander can also handle business on the feet. On my bookie, Lucas Alexander opened as a -325. It wouldn't have been a bad leg in a parlay potentially early on. He's now a -475. It still may not be a bad leg potentially. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, like just based on the stylistic matchup here, because this could be a fight where they kind of have some fun striking it out, and maybe Jeka shows up and surprises, and maybe he ekes out a split decision. I'm not saying I see that happening. I'm just saying if Lucas just entertains a striking affair, maybe Jeka, maybe he shows a little something. Also note, out of his 13 victories, Jeka Saragih has 8 knockouts. Okay, so if he does touch the chin, the fight can end. And we've seen him have a lot of knockouts. Before that loss against Jubilee, he had 3 knockouts in a row. But again, against lower level competition there on the road to FC and throughout his career. So we're not banking on him to come through there. Lucas Alexander to get the job done. I'm going to say that Lucas gets a decision victory, just being a step ahead the whole way throughout this fight. But you got to think that he has enough wits to change levels and get this fight down to the mat and just really dominate some of these rounds. And maybe he gets a finish down on the mat. We'll see. But on the feet, I think that Jeka can survive and entertain. Over to the very deep flyweight division, we got Charles Johnson taking on the UFC newcomer Rafael Estevam, who's coming off a dominating victory on Dana White's Contender Series, where he was actually facing off against some legitimate competition there against João Elias, and he finished him in the second round, just dominated him down on the mat, was raining down elbows, using that ground and pound, finished him up there. Has a legitimate victory over Felipe Esteves over in LFA. He has a couple scattered legitimate victories, and then some padded victories early on in his career. But he's 11-0. He's undefeated, and his jiu-jitsu and grappling is serious. He pushes the pace very early on. He's good with his offensive wrestling, I would say, his takedowns. So he has the jiu-jitsu in his back pocket, but he has shown to be able to get the fight down to the mat pretty effectively as well. I think that's where he's going to have an edge in this fight. On the feet, we still need to see more from him there. He's a little green, and we know that Charles Johnson is a fighter that could really put some volume out there with his striking. And I could definitely see a situation where if Charles Johnson can keep this fight standing for the vast majority, I could see Charles Johnson edging out a decision and getting a victory here. Now Charles Johnson, if you really look at what he's been doing as of recently, it hasn't been looking that good because he's coming off 2 losses. He gassed out in the O'Day Osborne fight. I know he took that fight on short notice, but he still gassed out. He says he was training fully leading up to that fight. The Jimmy Flick knockout victory. Jimmy Flick has been getting finished by everybody now since he made his return from his retirement, and he obviously doesn't have his head in the game. Zhalgas Zhumagulov, he's just aged pretty bad. He's a fighter that shouldn't even be on the UFC roster. I don't think he is anymore. And then Muhammad Mokaev, the big fight on Johnson's resume was that loss to Mokaev, based on the fact that he was able to have some success. He stuffed takedowns, and everybody was so high on Mokaev, including myself. Even though Mokaev just had that submission victory, I think we're seeing that Mokaev round to round isn't as dominating of a fighter as maybe we thought that he was going to be. So, Johnson has the maturity with his age and whatnot. He has some good experience. He has 18 professional fights. He has 7 more pro fights than Rafael Estevam. He's fought in the UFC a lot more. Obviously, he has some edges going there. But I'm going to say that Rafael Estevam gets the job done here. I think he has success getting this fight down to the mat for a good portion of this fight, at least enough to get his hand raised. That's what I'm sensing here. I think this UFC newcomer here, Rafael Estevam, may be another legitimate up-and-coming Brazilian fighter, another young, promising Brazilian fighter here, a great addition to the flyweight division. And Charles Johnson, he just gets a little sloppy at times, and I could just see Rafael Estevam being a little bit more technical defensively and just setting up his takedowns and getting the fight down to the mat and using his jiu-jitsu. You also note that he's a diverse finisher, 4 knockouts, 3 subs. Again, a lot of those knockouts are even down on the mat, so he'll open up with the ground and pound and whatnot. I like the UFC newcomer here, okay? Now we're going to take a look at the betting line here. Some interesting movement. The UFC newcomer opened up as a plus 105 dog on my bookie. He is now a minus 145 favorite. So some pretty significant movement coming his way. So people kind of seeing the same thing that I'm seeing. I think people are understanding this dude Estevam has some legitimate potential, whereas Charles Johnson does some things well. He's a scrappy dude. But he seems to be lacking in some certain fields. And he's a good fighter, but there's some potential that Estevam can be a very good fighter. Time will tell. Obviously, he needs to prove a lot more. So it's an interesting line. If you guys like Johnson, you can get him at a plus 115 dog line right now. All right, the UFC veteran Johnson, you can get him at a plus 115 dog line. Like I said, I like Estevam to win this fight, and it's still a relatively close line. I still like Estevam here. I think he will get this fight down to the mat, and he will be on another level with the jiu-jitsu. And when you see them scrambling and whatnot, he will be the fighter that has the success down there. And on the feet, I think that he will show that he's pretty technical with the striking as well, and will hang. Over to the bantamweight division, we have Chad Anheliger, who was returning to the cage after about a year layoff, taking on Jose Johnson. I definitely want to call him Jose Johnson, just to tip my hat to the legend Jose Aldo. I feel like with the name that he carved out in the game, almost any fighter with the name of Jose should now be called Jose. That's just the route I'm going there. But Jose Johnson, this is a fighter that I've had my eye on for a long time. If you remember, he was a highly touted prospect coming into that fight there against Ronnie Lawrence in early 2020. This was January 9th of 2020 before the world fell apart. Now, if you remember, he was a pretty big favorite in that match, and Ronnie Lawrence took him down and beat the crap out of him for 15 minutes straight. Okay, since then, he had to work his way back to the UFC with some wins and some losses. He got knocked out by Mana Martinez. We know he's a UFC caliber fighter. Got knocked out by him over in Fury FC. Strung together 2 more victories over in Fury FC, and then got an opportunity on Dana White's Contender Series again, where he did defeat the Cage Warriors champion Jack Cartwright, who was undefeated at the time. I'm still not so sure Jack Cartwright is a legitimate fighter. I don't know. Time will tell with him. After that, he gets his UFC debut against Damon Blackshear, and he gets caught with a twister in the first round, dropping the ball once again. Okay, this is a fighter that's 15-8. He's already tasted defeat 8 times at the age of 28. So it's great he's getting experience, but this is a fighter that loses. All right. He's, I don't know, just again, when you think about how he was just this highly touted prospect, he was supposed to be like the real deal, and he was supposed to come into the UFC and make some noise. I mean, this is a fighter that loses quite often. Chad Anheliger, on the other hand, is a fighter that has, I would say, it's the word I'm looking for here. He has overachieved. He has gone out there and got victories against guys that maybe he shouldn't have. Has a victory over Brady Heiston before he made it over to the UFC. He has a victory. He has a victory over Jesse Strader. He knocked him out. He has also a decision victory over Mun Gafarov, who Gafarov is a fighter that's pretty hyped up. I know he just took an L on that card over in Abu Dhabi, but it was against high-level competition. It was an official play of mine against Said Nurmagomedov, but still, Gafarov is a talented fighter. We've seen him go toe-to-toe with the likes of John Lineker over in ONE FC, and I still think that showcase that Chad Anheliger is a legitimate fighter. I think that he's an overachiever, and I could definitely see him going out here and getting a victory. Again, when we circle back to that Contender Series victory that he had over Mun Gafarov, he was a big underdog in that spot, and he showed up and got the job done. It was an absolute war. He dug deep. He changed levels. He has great cardio. He dug deep and got the job done. Jose Aldo goes into his first fight in Dana White's Contender Series, and he's the big favorite. He gets smashed. But again, I know he was young, so there's growing pains going on there too. Major pluses for Jose Johnson here. He has a huge reach. Okay, he has about an 8-inch reach advantage. He's 6 inches taller. He's going to have some real length advantage here, and I think that he could have success working from the outside. He has some pop on his shots. He's pretty diverse with the striking. 8 knockouts out of his 15 victories, more than half of his victories coming by way of knockout. You take a look at Chad Anheliger. He out of 18 fights, he has never been finished due to strikes. Okay, so I think you guys see where I'm going with this, right? I'm kind of setting it up right now. I am going with the dog, Chad Anheliger, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. He's pretty polished up down on the mat. He has good footwork, great cardio. I think that he could potentially get this fight down to the mat and expose Jose Johnson's grappling once again. Now, I know he only has 3 submission victories. This is a guy that's never even solidified a takedown in the UFC thus far. Not a lot of experience, but still. But I think that he's been preparing for this opportunity. He's had over a year. I think he's a crafty fighter. He's a crafty veteran. And I think that he'll have a little bit more wisdom in the cage. He'll have a little bit of a higher fighter IQ. And I think he can get this fight down to the mat. If he doesn't get hurt badly, early on in this fight with the length of Johnson, I think that he could potentially sneak this fight out. I'm going to say he either potentially finishes this fight down in the mat or maybe a split decision victory if the fight does play out a little bit longer on the feet than maybe Chad would like. But I still think maybe he could weather the storm with his volume and activity and whatnot. All right, he is a plus 160 underdog right now, opened up as a plus 145 on my bookie. So action going the other way on Johnson. People see the youth, the talent, the length, and all that, and I think people think that he's probably going to be coming to here. They look at Anheliger. He's coming off a loss, coming off a long layoff, coming off that loss to Hailey Alatang, who's actually a pretty good fighter, an underrated fighter, the Chinese fighter there. So maybe don't be so harsh on him. Maybe Hailey Alatang would go out there and finish Johnson maybe quickly, potentially, just saying. So give me the dog here. You guys know we've been picking some dogs here and there. We've been having some success. Not saying this is going to be an official play or whatnot. Stay tuned and see. But I am going to pick Anheliger here. I don't think that Johnson has done anything to warrant the line that's next to his name, which right now is a minus 220 on my bookie. No siree, Bob. One of the best matchups on this card here, JSP, Jonathan Pearce, taking on Joanderson Brito in the featherweight division. A stylistic clash. JSP obviously favors his wrestling and grappling. He breaks these guys with the pace that he pushes, man. He's amazing there. And Joanderson Brito, a fighter that has some serious power on the feet. We've seen him go out there and starch guys like Andre Fili, Chipe Mariscal over in LFA. Even in his Dana White's Contender Series victory against Lucas Alexander, a fighter we just talked about a little bit, landing some big shots early on in that fight. Just knocked out Weston Wilson. Weston Wilson shouldn't be fighting in the UFC. He's a friend of Stephen Thompson, so that was what it was. I mean, good to see Wilson get that opportunity, but Brito starches him in that last fight there. So Brito's still only 28 years old, which is crazy because he has the face of a 36-year-old. But just understand that with him being 28, he's just going to get better and better and better all the way into his 30s there. So, how do I see this fight playing out? I'm going to cut to the chase a little bit here, man. I'm very high on JSP, and I think that if this fight plays out for the long haul, I think it favors him very much so. Now, Brito has some skills down in the mat as well. Whoa. Excuse me, guys, as I know that I'm just starting off a cold, 100%. I know it's hitting me. I just felt it this morning. I've been sneezing all morning, and I got that tickle, and I'm starting to feel it. So I'm in the very beginning stages of a cold here. But what was I saying? Oh, Brito does have a grappling game in his own right, but if this fight plays out for the long haul, JSP will be the fighter that has the success, and he will get his hand raised. I feel very confident in that. The pace that he pushes, it's going to be a little bit too much for Brito to hang, in my opinion, for 15 minutes. I think Brito has to have success on the feet. He has to land big shots. JSP training over at Team Fight Ready for some time right now, for some time over the past couple of years. I think that he's really fine-tuning his craft. And again, as I said, this is a stylistic matchup where I think Brito needs to land that big shot. Joe Lauzon knocked out Jonathan Pearce in Jonathan Pearce's UFC debut. So we've seen him starch. That was the only time we've ever seen him knocked out. And ever since then, he's really polished up his defense, just going out there, finishing Kai Kamaka, finishing Omar Morales, grinding out C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez, a fighter that has really proved to be one of the top up-and-coming fighters, finished Makwan Americani, just defeated Darren Elkins. I know Darren Elkins isn't a spring chicken, but Darren Elkins still going out there doing what he does, right? Still going out and grinding these guys with the grappling, pulling off subs. He is something else. And JSP getting the better of those type of exchanges, showing how good he is there. So give me JSP. I think he's a stud, and I think that he'll play this fight smart enough that he could avoid that early damage and just get a hold of Brito and do what he does best. And also, I want to bring up the Bill Algeo fight that Brito had, which was one of his more recent losses, where Bill Algeo was 2 of 2 on his takedown attempts. He had over an entire round of control, 5 minutes and 2 seconds of control time there. Pulled off a reversal as well with the jiu-jitsu. He outstruck Brito 2-1, more than 2-1, 112 to 46 there. You guys know I'm high on Bill Algeo, just had an official play in him that cashed. But I think that JSP does some of those things even better. So yeah, I am going with JSP to get the job done. And we are going to take a look at the betting line here, where we are going to see that Jonathan Pearce, he is a minus 135 right now in my bookie. He's still available as low as minus 125, minus 135. So people do obviously have a lot of respect for Brito. On my bookie, Pearce opened as a minus 170, and action is continuously coming in on Brito. So if you like Pearce, you might be able to sit back and just watch that line get better and better. Obviously, if you like Brito, you want it to be on him early. I'm on the JSP side, so I could sit back and just see how much closer this line will close. I think the grappling will outweigh the striking of Brito. I know every fight starts on the feet, but you got 15 minutes, and JSP will have plenty of time to close the distance and grind out Brito, or just have success with that grappling and maybe even potentially set up that sub. Up to the heavyweight division, we got Michael Parkin taking on Chao Machado, both fighters coming off Dana White's Contender Series. Now, Parkin has already had a chance to touch down in the octagon, and he looked great in that UFC debut where he went out there and really whooped up Jamal Pogues. Jamal Pogues is a fighter that I actually have a decent amount of respect for. I think that he's actually a UFC caliber fighter, and Parkin just stifled him on the feet. Okay, and Pogues, that's really his strength, is his striking, and the way that Parkin stifled him on the feet, I was pretty impressed there, outstriking him 98 to 37. I did think that was impressive. And, Parkin, obviously a fighter that it trains extensively with Tom Aspinall, the now UFC heavyweight champion of the world. And in my opinion, the greatest talent that we've ever seen in the division. I truly believe that. And again, I did have Pavlovich winning that fight, but I said it was going to be a fire fight. And, they were just, I said that both the fighters were just absolute studs, but I just felt that Pavlovich was going to touch him. But I want to be clear, Aspinall did come out with his hand raised, and he gets credit for that victory now. And just the footwork, the speed, the overall skill set that he has with the jiu-jitsu skills in his back pocket, the grappling skills, I think that he's the greatest heavyweight talent we've ever seen. So just understand, Parkin training with him regularly, that obviously does wonders for your growth as a fighter. And, Chao Machado, on the other hand, Chao Machado, he got a little bit of a layup fight on Dana White's Contender Series, fighting, in my opinion, a slouch, fighting that guy, Kevin Soflarski, who just, looked overweight and looked sluggish, had no volume in that fight. I believe he threw like 5 strikes that entire fight. So he got a little bit of a layup there. And then we look up the strength of schedule that Machado has had fighting over in the BFL up in Canada. I'm not high on the level of talent up there. And, Chao Machado, a little bit of a pudgy dude in his own right. Although, don't get it twisted. It's not like Parkin's all shredded up and whatnot, but he makes it work. He has a nice frame. I think that Parkin is the much more talented fighter here, and I think that Parkin's going to get the better of the striking exchanges. I think that he's just a better overall fighter, and I think that Parkin's actually going to prove to be a legitimate UFC heavyweight fighter. I got those vibes from him after seeing him in that last fight there, and not sure if we ever see him potentially putting himself in the hat to have people talking about him fighting his training partner in Aspinall. I'm not sure about all that. Time will tell. He's only 28 years old, which is extremely young for the heavyweight division. He has a solid frame on him. Both men the same height. Parkin will have a 1-inch reach advantage. Both guys big heavyweight fighters, but Parkin the much more talented fighter, and the fighter that I have getting his hand raised, and I think he'll just be better anywhere this fight goes, quite simply. All right, so we'll take a look at the betting line which we will see that Parkin is a hefty favorite. He's a minus 375 favorite, opening up as a minus 204. It's a pretty high line right now for a heavyweight fight, but if you really, I told you guys that this cold's coming, I'm telling you. But if you need to have action on it and you're a little late to the party, you can throw it in a parlay. But obviously, if you grabbed it early on at minus 204, 210, 217, that would have been great. Even 250. I think Parkin goes out here and just really is a step ahead the entire fight. I'm going to favor the fight going to a decision. I think maybe Machado will show to be somewhat durable, but he'll get outlanded on. Over to the women's bantamweight division, we have Lucie Pudilová taking on Ailin Perez. Ailin Perez, you guys know you love yourself some Perez. She's out there clapping the cheeks, doing the frog walk, hopping around the cage. I mean, she's all that in a bag of chips, as they used to say back in the day. Ailin Perez, man, I like this chick. But listen, besides, all the antics and whatnot, she's actually a good fighter. I really, truly believe that. She has a little bit of that, those pitbull vibes to her. She's a very aggressive striker. Her strikes don't necessarily come right down the pipe. They're a little loopy, but they're quick and they're powerful, and they're going to give a lot of girls problems. All right. So coming into her UFC debut, she was essentially undefeated. Even when you take a look at the Tamaris Vidal loss that she had, that was a fight that was a DQ. Okay. Excuse me here. I'm pretty positive that was a DQ. It's saying KO, TKO method here. No, that was a DQ. And just to clarify that real quick, and it was, yes, it was. And she was the aggressor in that fight. And I believe, when Vidal was down in the cage, I'm trying to remember. Doesn't matter anyway. I think she kicked her in the head or hit her with the knee. She hit her with something illegal. Just showcasing again how aggressive and nasty she could be in the cage. And I like that. I like my fighter to have that type of power and aggressiveness in the cage. She also showed in her last fight that she can mix things up, change levels. She had some control time on Ashley Evans-Smith. Ashley Evans-Smith had that size advantage as well. Now, Ashley Evans-Smith was coming off a long layoff, and she's a questionable fighter, but she's been around. We'll give her a little bit of respect there. It was a good victory for Ailin Perez. I thought that if you break the tape down on that fight, I thought that Ailin Perez showcased that she has some skills, and I think that she will give girls problems in the division. I don't think that she's just a persona or anything like that, just a showboating type of fighter. She's a knockout artist, or a finisher, I guess you could say at the very least. 8 victories, 5 of them coming by way of finish, 4 knockouts, 1 sub. And then on the other hand, we have Lucie Pudilová. If you guys remember, she had an initial stint in the UFC a while back when she was very young. She went on a 4-fight losing skid, losing to fighters like Liz Carmouche. I remember losing to Irene Aldana, some talented fighters, but also being submitted by Antonina Shevchenko. Now, that's a horrible look when you remember how bad the ground game of Antonina's was. Also lost the decision to Justine Kish. Really wasn't the best look for her, that original stint, but she was young, was coming in with more of a kickboxing background. She was still working on her overall craft. Since leaving the UFC, she had a good amount of success, going 5-1 before her return fight. The only fighter she lost to was Talita Bernardo, a fighter that should be in the UFC, a former UFC fighter, a very talented Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So showing growth in her game. And then she gets the victory over Yanin Wu in her return. And then she loses to Jocelyn Edwards via split decision in a fight that, if I remember correctly, that was a fight that a lot of people thought that Lucie potentially should have won. So anyways, here in this matchup, I'm going to say Ailin Perez is gonna have success with the power in her hands. I think that she's gonna get the better of the striking exchanges. Maybe not overwhelmingly, because Pudilová is diverse with her attacks, with the kicks and all that, and she can throw a lot of volume out there. But I think the power that Perez possesses, I think that will be the difference on the feet. And then also, I wouldn't be surprised if Perez changes levels and maybe gets on top. It's just overall a step ahead here. She's a very powerful fighter. She's an aggressive fighter, and I like her vibes. I like her skill set, and she is young, 29 years old, hasn't cracked 30 yet. I think she'll continue to grow, and I'm going to take Perez here, and I'll be transparent. I was very close to taking Lucie Pudilová originally. I actually had her marked as my pick here initially, but the more I was breaking down tape and watching Ailin Perez in her last fight, where I thought that she looked very good against Ashley Evans-Smith, I think she comes into this fight with a lot of momentum, and I think that she edges out Lucie with the power in her hands and whatnot, like we talked about. So we'll take a look at the betting line, where we're going to see that Ailin Perez is the favorite. She is a -200 right now, open as a -130. A lot of action coming in on her, and I think people are just rewatching that Ashley Evans Smith fight, and they're seeing that she's an aggressive fighter that's probably going to crack on the feet, and she can hold her own too. She can do it all, a little bit of it all, and she's a very confident fighter. Give me Ailin Perez to get the job done. She is a fight finisher. Lucie Pudilová only being finished once in her career out of 22 pro fights. Kind of hard to target a finish here in this women's matchup here, if we're being honest. I'll say Ailin Perez via decision, but Ailin Perez is a fight finisher. Maybe she can get a finish over Pudilová. In the lightweight division, we have Nikolas Motta taking on Trey Ogden. Nikolas Motta, a fighter, had a big victory on Dana White's Contender Series a while back, and hasn't been very active, right? Because he had that victory back in 2020 against Joseph Lowry, and looked good in that fight, landed a lot of heavy shots, and after that he has only fought 3 times, right? So he's averaging essentially a fight a year, if that. Got knocked out in his last fight against Manuel Torres, got knocked out in his UFC debut against Jim Miller, had a knockout of his own against Cameron Van Camp. A fighter that was knocked out in both of his UFC fights and has since been let go, I do believe, and just is really not on the level, hasn't proved to be on the level. So I'm not putting too much stock into that knockout victory. In fact, the thing I want to focus on more so is the fact that Nikolas Motta has shown to be vulnerable when it comes to being hit. And I know that Trey Ogden is a fighter that has 0 knockouts, all right, as a professional, but this is still the fight game. This is MMA. They wear super small gloves, and Ogden, he still knows how to throw, some decent attacks on the feet when you break down his tape. I mean, there's a very likely possibility. I still say that with the aggressiveness of Motta and that chin being touched up multiple times, I could see Trey getting his first knockout victory here over Motta. Also, I mean, you got some pretty cool moving parts here because, Trey is a fighter that has 10 submission victories out of his 16 victories. He has gone out there and really used his grappling to have a lot of success. Well, on the other hand, Motta, has, he's been pretty decent over, at least I would say as of recently, avoiding being submitted. Okay. You take a look at his 2 submission losses. They were a ways back. Okay. They were a long time ago. In fact, if you really want to pull it up, those submission losses came all the way back, in 2015 on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil, and then also all the way back in 2013. So it's been a good 8 years or so, if not a decade, about a decade since he's been getting submitted. So you can kind of see that he's been working on that aspect of his game. He's a striking first type of fighter, but he's a fighter that lacks defensively and lacks having a chin, and I think that's not the perfect recipe. Trey has never been knocked out. He's shown to be a durable fighter. In fact, even though he has those submission skills, his one of the majority of the ways he loses is being submitted, which is kind of interesting there. And Motta is a fighter that has 0 submission victories. So there's just all these moving parts here. When you mix the whole recipe together, I see some advantages more so leaning Trey's way. He also has about a 2-inch reach advantage. About a 2-inch height advantage. He is a little bit more of the naturally large fighter, which isn't something new when you see Motta step in the cage. He's a little bit of an undersized lightweight fighter, does have some power in his hands, and could put some good volume out there with the striking. He's a pretty aggressive striker, has some skills there. I want to make that clear, and there's potential he can outstrike Trey and take a decision there. But when you look at his 18 professional fights, you're talking about a fighter that has only gone to a decision 5 times out of 18 pro fights. He brings the fight, and I think that Trey can kind of be the matador here, and we'll see how the fight plays out, but I wouldn't be shocked if Trey's the first fighter to get a knockout victory if Trey is able to get his first knockout victory here against Nikolas Motta. If not, he has the grappling in his back pocket. Give me the underdog, who's a +115 dog right now. Open as a +115 dog, touched the +120, but it jumped right back to a +115 line. And I think the value is more so on him. And just straight up, I'm edging him to win this fight. So we'll see how it plays out. and this will be a big victory. Remember, he did have a victory against Daniel Zoliber, who has been on absolute fire. He actually outstruck Daniel Zoliber, if you guys remember that fight. Excuse me here, I don't have it in front of me, but yes, he did outstrike him quite a bit in that fight, which is pretty surprising because Zoliber has been an absolute tear. The Jordan Leavitt fight wasn't Trey's best showcase. I think that went to a split decision. He could have done more, lost that first round, but I think he could snag this victory. We got a fire fight set to take place in the welterweight division. Two very entertaining strikers, Uros Medic, an absolute knockout artist, taking on Johnny Parsons. A fighter, you could definitely say he's a knockout artist in his own right. 9 victories, 7 coming by way of knockout. The longtime Syndicate MMA striking coach. He's a little pit bull. Both these fighters coming off Dana White's Contender Series to begin their UFC careers, which every fighter is coming off Dana White's Contender Series these days. You guys know that. But Johnny Parsons, he had a split decision victory over Solomon Renfro. He shouldn't have gotten the nod in that fight. You know, he showcased that he's an exciting fighter in that fight, but he lost to Solomon Renfro. And it's going to shout Solomon Renfro out because that was very frustrating for him, because after that, he gets matched up with Adam Fuguet, a.k.a. Adam Forget About It, in his next fight, and he gets knocked out. So his back was really up against the wall. He strung off 3 victories in a row, getting a couple finishes there. Then he loses his last fight over in the PFL against Magomed Kirmov. So just a shout out to Renfro there. But you know, after that though, he has his UFC debut. So he hasn't been very active. Just one fight, all the way dating back since 2021. After that, just one fight where he got the knockout against Danny Roberts, the polished, if you want to call him a Black Zillion, Hard Knock 365. You know, he was one of the staples of that gym, which now is Team Killcliff. But a polished striker, but a fighter in Danny Roberts that is lacking defensively and has issues with his chin. But Parsons was able to find the mark. That's what he's going to look to do here. He's going to look to touch the chin of Medic's. But the problem is that Medic has shown to be extremely durable. He's never been finished via strikes. He's only been submitted once. He was only lost once. And in his last fight against Matthew Semmelsberger, he weathered the storm and in an amazing way, and eventually got his own finish late in that fight. It was a standout fight for Medic. He really put himself on the map. Fights out of the southpaw stance. He's going to have that length advantage here. I think this is going to be a very, very fun fight, but I think this fight does favor Medic when you kind of analyze the stylistic matchup. I think that Parsons is going to look to throw down with him, and I think that Medic should have more success on the feet. Now, Parsons has only been knocked out once before, so he's shown to be very durable. Also has a decision loss there as well, but he's shown to be very durable. I think this fight plays out on the feet. I think this is going to be one of the more fan-pleasing affairs of the night. Here it goes again. Oh, man. I literally just caught a cold live as I started this video. I swear I felt it as the video kicked off. So it's hitting in full effect right now. I'm going to have the flu by the time this thing's done. But Medic, 30 years old. He is a very, very promising fighter. Like I said, fighting out of the southpaw stance. He's a tricky fighter. I was a little hard on him after he took that loss to Jalen Turner back in 2021. But Turner has shown to be such a dangerous fighter, so we just understand that was just a matchup of 2 phenomenal fighters there, and it didn't go his way. Again, victories over Omar Morales and Matthew Semmelsberger since then, finishes over both them, finishes over Alon Cruz, the former Publix bag boy, and a finish over Mikey Gonzalez in that DWCS fight. He is a fight finisher. He will throw some diverse attacks your way. He is cruising into the prime of his career. He's a dangerous dude, has a great frame. I like Uros Medic here. I think this is going to be a striking affair, and I just think that I like the length, the durability, and the diversity in his striking. Johnny Parsons will have that heavy Muay Thai attack coming his way, but overall, I think that Medic gets the job done. So let's take a look at the line here, and we will see Uros Medic is a pretty big favorite. He's a minus 250. He was a 260, dipped to a 270, went back all the way up to a 250. So interesting line movement there, but one thing stays the same, and that he is a pretty hefty favorite. I like Uros Medic to get the job done here, and I have a feeling this fight will go to a decision. I think they'll go tit for tat. I think it'll be a war, but I think both men are pretty durable, and I think that Medic will edge out a decision. But we'll see some big shots landed, but the pitbull and Johnny Parsons, I think he survives, and in the same time, I think Parsons lands some big shots, so I think Medic shows his durability and doesn't get finished either. So give me Uros Medic via decision. Is it a potential two-leg piece? I don't know. I don't know about all that. Parsons may be able to hang and keep this fight close. You know, potentially, but So Amanda Ribas is looking to drop down to the women's strawweight division. We know that she's been fighting in the flyweight division for some time. She's taken on the number 9th ranked strawweight right off the rip, Luana Pinheiro, a talented fighter. I do have some question marks in regards to Pinheiro. We're going to talk about that in a second. First and foremost, Amanda Ribas, a fighter that is known for her jiu-jitsu, I would say. Mostly her jiu-jitsu is her main strength. But over the years, she's shown to really have been putting in a lot of work on her striking, especially when it just comes to her volume and the toughness that she's willing to display standing. She'll take a lot of damage just to inflict damage on you. I saw her fight live back in the day against Mackenzie Dern, where she absolutely pieced Dern apart. And, even as of recently, she's had some big performances where she's just pushed the pace with the striking, putting out a crazy amount of volume. And that's what she will look to do if you want to go toe-to-toe with her. Now, in the meantime, she will be vulnerable to being clipped with the big shot and being put out. We've seen that, right? We've seen that against Marina Rodriguez. Keep in mind, Marina Rodriguez is a world-class Muay Thai striker. Besides that, we have seen her, and just to note, she's been knocked out 3 times in her pro career. Out of 4 of her losses, 3 of them have come by way. 75% of them have come by way of knockout loss. She was just knocked out against Macy Barber. But before that, she was knocked out back in 2015 against Polyana Viana, if you remember that too, right? Polyana Viana. But 3 knockout losses. So the issue I have here is that she's dropping down in weight. Obviously, a more serious weight cut for her. She'll be more prone to being knocked out. I do believe that, right? Weight cuts do correlate with that. And Luana Pinheiro is a talented striker. Now, the thing about Luana Pinheiro, the question mark I have about her, I don't think she has that dog in her. And I think that was showcased when she weaseled her way to a victory against Randa Marcos from that up kick, which clearly was not that big of a shot. It was very clear. I don't want to hear none of you guys saying, oh, you don't know what it's like, this and that. And there's always those type of dudes, right? The kind of dudes that like to, let me not go there. You know what kind of guy I'm talking about. But anyways, it wasn't that bad of a shot. She could have continued to fight, and she snuck that DQ victory there. But you know what? Since then, she had 2 more victories. And you know what? The last victory was questionable as well. A lot of people thought that Michelle Waterson won that fight. Michelle Waterson outstruck her. In fact, she outstruck her, 61-44. That was a very close fight. Waterson sneaking in a takedown as well. But Luana got the nod. Luana was a pretty big favorite going into that fight. And just, I don't know. I question that she has that dog in her. She's more of a fine-tuned striker. She's a good athlete. And I think that if Ribas can avoid being knocked out, I do believe that Ribas can push the volume on her and just make it a nasty fight where she could prevail. I definitely see that. Obviously, if this fight goes down to the mat, I think that Ribas can hang with anybody. She's very, very polished down on the mat with her BJJ. I think she has the edge there as well, even though Pinheiro has some skills there. Excuse me. But yeah, I am edging Ribas there. And of course, with Ribas dropping down in weight, she should have that natural size advantage as well. She'll have a 3.5 reach advantage, and she'll have about a 1.5 height advantage. She is just a little bit, she will be the more naturally larger girl in the cage. So those are some things that are going good for her there. I don't see Ribas knocking Pinheiro out, but I could see her kind of just bullying her. Maybe she can make it an ugly fight where Pinheiro is maybe a little bit more on the back foot and she gets outpointed. I think that's a very likely scenario. But again, I want to be clear stating this right now. I think there's a very likely situation where we see Pinheiro get a knockout shot landed on Ribas, and we see Ribas get knocked out for the 4th time in her career. I wouldn't like to see it happen. I really like Ribas. I think she's an awesome chick. She is just a very joyous person, and I really like everything about her. You know what I'm saying? So I am going to side with Amanda Ribas here. I think that there's just a couple more likely scenarios that take place with her getting the nod. But as you see, she opened as a -350 on my bookie. She's now at -260. And I understand why that line's coming down, because that's a high line there for a girl that gets tagged up on the feet against fighting a striker that is very accurate. And I think Pinheiro can land the mark, and she could potentially bloody up Ribas, bust that nose up. But Ribas will keep marching forward. Pinheiro will really have to stop her in her tracks to make a fight impacting moment in this fight. But give me Amanda Ribas. She has the volume. If she sneaks in a takedown, gets on top, obviously that will really be good for her as well. She's heavy on top, has solid jiu-jitsu. Give me Amanda Ribas. I hope she gets that nice victory down in the strawweight division. So Payton Talbott looks to make his UFC debut this upcoming Saturday. He takes on Nick Aguirre. Payton Talbott, I would say, is one of the more promising prospects that we've seen come off Dana White's Contender Series in some time. The performance that he had was extremely impressive. When you take a look at the intangibles that he showcased in the cage against Reyes Cortez, the amount of volume that he puts in the feet, the diverse striking, everything is just off the cuff when he's in the cage. I think he's a little bit of that new breed of MMA that people like to talk about. He's one of those types of fighters, right? He does things a little bit differently, and I think he's extremely talented. I've watched a lot of tape on him. I've been looking at watching a lot of sparring footage of him on his Instagram and whatnot, and he is definitely a fighter that spars heavy. He really, and I don't mean that he's throwing heavy shots on his training partner or whatnot, but you could see he has a lot of footage of just going toe to toe and a lot of tape of him sparring, and I think that's why he's so comfortable when he's in the cage, and he can get away with that right now. He's such a young fighter. He's 25 years old. This isn't a fighter that's in his mid or low 30s and has been knocked out a couple times. You got to be careful a little bit. He's young, he's fresh, he can spar hard, and all his reflexes and motor skills are going to be hitting on all cylinders when he's in the cage. He has a bright future ahead of him right now. Now, going in to his Dana White's Contender Series fight, some of the question marks I had about him, even in some of those fights that he had victories in, was that he was taken down. And he was taken down quite a few times within these victories, and he eventually got up, got knockouts or whatnot. But I was worried that a guy like Reyes Cortez, who has a little bit of a wrestling background, could have taken him down. And Reyes Cortez didn't really have any success there with the wrestling ability. And I think that Payton Talbott's just going to get better and better. Nick Aguirre does have skills down in the mat. We've seen him sub a few guys. Not high in his striking whatsoever. I think Payton's going to tee off on him on the feet. And I don't think that Nick Aguirre is going to be able to get this fight down to the mat and be able to have that success down there. I think that Talbott will use his footwork and just be too much of an offensive threat for Nick Aguirre to really have that success there. Nick Aguirre fought in the UFC just once as of now, and he was really he was really roughed up by Dan Argueta. If you guys remember, that was on that card of Sean Strickland and excuse me, name slipping my mind, but the guy that what's his name? It doesn't matter anyway. But Abus Magomedov, I believe it was that card. And Argueta outstruck him 47-14, had over 10 minutes of control time. Total strikes 93-15. I mean, really just worked him there. I think Talbott can push a pace just like Argueta did. A little bit of different styles, as Talbott's more of a striker, Argueta more of a grappler, which I think would even, I think that's even going to be more of a problem for Aguirre there. I think on the feet, Talbott is really going to be, it's going to be hurting him, man. This kid, he's a wild dude too. If you follow him on IG, he's like a big fan of like Dennis Rodman, Conor McGregor. I'm trying to think a couple other guys he was mentioning. He's a wild dude. He's going to be a fun fighter to watch and to see how his career progresses. I think that he has a bright future ahead of him. So let's not go on too much about this. This is a little bit of a mismatch. It's worth noting Aguirre actually has a 2-inch reach, or excuse me, a 1.5-inch reach advantage, even though he's an inch shorter. Not impressed with Aguirre's striking. You can even watch his highlight finishes on the feet. They're very loopy. He was fighting lower level fighters, and I'm not too impressed there. Payton Talbott opened up as a -600. He's now a -800 over on my bookie, right? He's a massive favorite. What are you going to do with the -800 line? It's probably not worth touching. Let's be honest about that. Talbott will outclass him, though. I think Talbott is the truth. I think he probably gets a finish even. I think he's going to really be landing. You're going to see a bloodied up Aguirre. It's just not worth touching at that line, though. And yes, even though I'm kind of feeling Talbott gets that finish, be careful if you're targeting that as a bet, because you also know Aguirre hasn't been finished yet in his 8 pro fights. just that one decision loss. And Talbott, even as good as he looked in that last fight against Reyes Cortez, he wasn't able to get Cortez out of there. And he was really landing some heavy shots. And be wary that maybe he just dominates and cruises into like a 30-26 type of UD. Two polarizing fighters set to face off in the lightweight division here. Jordan Leavitt taking on Chase Hooper. Their styles make this such a fun fight too, because both of them are very polished up with their BJJ. On the feet, they're lacking. I would say they're lacking with their striking, even though Jordan Leavitt has shown to be funky and make it work at times, right? He's just coming off a big knockout victory against, I think it was against Victor Martinez, I believe it was. The tough Mexican fighter there. So, Leavitt has had his moments. Chase Hooper, I'm not completely sold on his striking at all. Still 24 years old. He's so young. I know he's been training with some of the greats in their respected fields, working on his wrestling with guys like Ben Askren, believe getting in some striking work with Stephen Thompson. But again, his base is his BJJ. I could see Chase Hooper having the edge if this fight goes down to the mat, but you also have to understand that Leavitt is very polished there, and, time will tell how that plays out. The edge that I see, though, in this fight is I think that Leavitt has the ability to land some big shots, and one way or another, land that big shot. When I say a shot, it could be a slam like we've seen him do before in the past. It could just be something funky, like he landed a knee in his last fight. He's a very unorthodox type of striker, but seems to have more power in his own weird way. And a guy like Chase Hooper, Hooper's a fighter that, I should say a kid in Hooper, he takes a lot of damage. He's shown that time and time again, even dating all the way back to his Dana White's Contender Series fight where he got the nod. He took so much damage early on in that fight, and his opponent basically gassed out, and then he used his BJJ skills. So he continuously takes that kind of damage, and I think that it's a possibility that Leavitt lands heavy in this fight. But I will slightly edge Hooper down in the mat if it's just a BJJ game. The way that Paddy Pimblett pulled off that sub on Leavitt was a little disappointing from Leavitt's side there. He's known for his BJJ, and the way that Pimblett just secured that, I wasn't too impressed there. But against fighters that don't have grappling like Matt Sales and other guys, he's really gone out there and has worked wonders. His DWCS fight against Luke Flores, he's good there. But I'm very, very intrigued with this matchup. Check out what Jordan Leavitt was saying over on IG, just to give you an idea what he thinks about the betting line. Which, as he posted it, he was a plus 200 dog. There's been some action coming in on him since then, but he said, "Gyro, what? Bookies, you will pay for your insolence." So, he's a funny character, and I kind of agree with him here. As we go talk about the betting line, I don't understand why he was a 2-1 dog, as it's starting to level out here. He's now a plus 175 dog on my bookie, and you could also still grab him at a plus 185 type line on Bovada, plus 180. He's still a pretty big underdog, and I think this fight should be more of a coin flip. We've seen Hooper go out there and look lost before. He's still 24 years old. He's a young kid. You think about the performances against Steve Garcia, Steven Peterson, Bruce Leroy. He's had some very questionable performances against, don't want to disrespect Bruce Leroy. He's a good fighter, but the other guys, Steve Garcia and Steven Peterson, you're talking about C-level, D-level fighters, right? Fringe UFC fighters that potentially shouldn't even be in the octagon. So Hooper's still learning. The BJJ is solid, but he is vulnerable defensively. I'm gonna pick the dog here. I'm gonna take Jordan Leavitt. I think maybe he just pulls a wrench out of his bag and does something funky and hurts Hooper in this fight. Should be a fun fight. Value on Leavitt. And maybe he gets a finish, potentially Leavitt with a funky finish, some funky ground and pound maneuver, or maybe even on the feet, something funky like a front kick, like when Silva hit Vitor Belfort, although way uglier, but something funky cracks the chin of Chase Hooper, and he's not munching on his M&Ms after the fight in a joyful manner. To the co-main event in the welterweight division, the longtime UFC fighter Jake Matthews, still only 29 years old, which is crazy, taking on Michael Morales, the 24-year-old stud prospect who is now just really laying the groundwork in the octagon. He's stringing off victories in the cage, taking out formidable opponents. He now has victories over Max Griffin, Adam Fouguet, and most notably the knockout victory over Trevin Giles, a fighter that I am high on. Yes, he is the real deal. Michael Morales is the real deal. Again, when he came off DWCS, people were talking about the potential that he has with the wrestling background. He was an Ecuadorian wrestling champion. He's a very lengthy fighter for the division, almost has an 80-inch reach, which is crazy for the welterweight division. He's a excellent striker, excellent boxer. He has all the tools to be a champion. So this, without question, will be the biggest victory of his career. Jake Matthews is a phenomenal fighter. And Jake Matthews has his ups and downs, though. He's coming off a victory against a short notice Darius Flowers, who was supposed to be fighting on this card, but unfortunately fell off. Got the submission there. Jake Matthews was very patient and set up the victory there. It was nice. But when you think about the performance he had against Andre Fialho, it seemed at that point in time that he was the next coming of himself. It was the performance was phenomenal. The striking clinic he put out there, he looked amazing with the way his footwork was and all that, how fast he was. And then he goes out and gets beaten down by Matthew Semmelsberger, or at least, gets outpointed all day. So, he took a step back there. He regressed. The Darius Flowers victory, you can't put too much stock into that. He's a fighter that potentially shouldn't even be fighting in the UFC, if you want to be honest. Got a short notice opportunity and jumped on it. Michael Morales is a potential future champion, and he's going to be the superior fighter here. So barring Morales doesn't get caught with a shot and things get shaken up, I do believe Morales will be a step ahead anywhere this fight goes. And that's going to be the case with Michael Morales facing off the vast majority of fighters in the division. That's how high I am on him right now. If he doesn't get clipped with the shot, minute to minute, he's going to be the fighter winning the vast majority of time in these rounds. He's going to be outstriking his opponents, sneaking in takedowns, just mixing things up. He is a phenomenal fighter, and I'm very, very excited to see how far he's going to push it. And, I kind of hope the UFC doesn't put him on the fast track too much, because he's still so young. I mean, he's 24 years old. Let the kid mature a little bit before he starts facing off, with the likes of, we take a look at the top 15 before he's fighting guys, like Shavkat Rakhmonov, Gilbert Burns, Covington, Muhammad Usman, Edwards, those types of guys, obviously. But, before you know it, you go out there, you knock out Jake Matthews, and before you know it, you're getting, a huge fight after that. So Jake Matthews doesn't currently have a rank next to his name. And Morales gets this victory. He's probably fighting in the top 15, and I think he should hold his own against fighters that are fringe top 15 guys. I think he can actually more than handle business against guys like Magny. I know Magny has a fight coming up. Chiesa's washed. He's old. Renat Fakhradinov showed to slow down in a major way. His stock drops. So just to touch upon that real quick. Yes, I am on Michael Morales. Jake Matthews has shown to be a pretty durable fighter throughout his career. Can Morales get the finish? Maybe he could pull off a sub down on the mat, similarly to what Brady was able to pull off using his jiu-jitsu skills. Also, Tony Martin was able to pull off a sub back in 2018. We have seen Matthews submitted as of recently, and Morales is a fighter that can get the fight down to the mat. And I wouldn't be surprised with him being so young if we start to see his submission skills and his grappling skills really start to grow. Don't be surprised if you see Morales start to really round out his game. I know he's been mostly getting knockouts, not a real submission artist, but I wanted to throw that out there. He has long limbs, and if he starts to work on snatching up those darts and some of those chokes and whatnot, don't be surprised there. But I wouldn't favor it. Maybe I would say maybe the knockout is more likely. But I got Michael Morales winning this fight, and this is a minus 290 line right now on my bookie. It's a pretty high line because he's actually now at minus 300. You got to respect Matthews. I just had Michael Morales entangled in a 2-team parlay. He handled business for me very nicely. But Matthews, man, he's a dangerous guy. I'm a little on the fence with what I want to do with this line. And this is a tricky one for me. I might just sit back and enjoy this fight and see how Morales looks and see what's next for him after this. Here we go. We got the main event. Two phenomenal grapplers, and Brendan Allen and Paul Craig. Also, I got to mention, Brendan Allen is a very complete fighter, a very dangerous striker as well, an underrated striker. Paul Craig, I would say he definitely relies more on his jiu-jitsu to have success in the cage. He's done that for years. He's very aggressive with his striking. He'll throw that nice power, that power body kick and whatnot from the back foot. But he's stiff. He's there to be hit. I could definitely see Brendan Allen having success in this fight with his striking if it stays there. But I'm not so sure that I see it staying there because Brendan Allen is more than willing to go down to the mat with stud grapplers. We've seen him been doing that as of recently. He just submitted Andre Muniz, correct? Just pulled off a submission against Andre Munoz back in February of this year, earlier this year. I followed that up with a submission over Bruno Silva. Not that Bruno Silva is a grappler, but still, he was willing to go down to the mat with Munoz, and that was really the first time we saw Munoz lose in that manner. Because yes, Paul Craig did just go out and defeat Munoz as well, but just remember, Allen was the first one to kind of exploit him there, and it was a little bit different. Obviously, Craig had the knockout victory there, but oh man, you guys, you literally see me go from being basically good to go to sick as a dog here by the main event. I find that funny. It's all on tape here, but my nose is running and everything. This hit me as we went through the show, but I'm hurting a little bit right now, so we'll wrap this up, but I got some points here we want to talk about. Brendan Allen is the more complete fighter here, and in Paul Craig, he has some major defensive deficiencies. We've seen him finished in a variety of ways by a good amount of people. Johnny Walker knocked him out not too long ago. We saw him knocked out by Alonzo Menafield. We saw him submitted by Jimmy Crute. I believe Crute caught him in a Kimura. Khalil Roundtree finishing him, Tyson Pedro finishing him. So even though Paul Craig has had so much success throughout the years, there's definitely one thing that has been there, and that's the fact that he kind of goes out on his shield. He looks to take you out or he gets taken out. And I think that could be an issue here because a fighter like Brendan Allen, he's just hitting on all cylinders right now. And I could very, very much see Brendan Allen stifling the grappling attack of Paul Craig and that aggressive style that he brings. I could see Allen stifling that and then just setting up a finish, at the right time when it comes. And Brendan Allen is a very patient fighter. It's funny because he has showcased that his entire UFC career, even dating back to the Dana White's Contender Series fight, where he had a very underrated victory against a fighter that should have been signed to the UFC. He slipped through the UFC's grasps, and Aaron Jeffrey, who Jeffrey's had a lot of success fighting over in Bellator, fighting for gold and whatnot. And in that fight, Jeffrey brought the fight and was landing heavily, and you just saw Allen sitting there waiting for a counter shot. Eventually, he clipped him, brought him down to the mat, submitted him. That's when he was training with Team Rufus Sport and all that. Now, for years, he's been training over with Team Killcliff, Hard Knocks 365, whatever you want to call it, all the different names. But, submitted Kevin Holland, knocked out Tom Breeze, victory over Kyle Dawkins, had that slip up against Sean Strickland where he dropped the ball and, really wasn't covering up well on the feet. It was just, he was kind of sloppy out there, and Sean Strickland teed off on him. And then ever since then, a couple victories here and there. Also was knocked out by Chris Curtis. So he's shown he's a little bit vulnerable on the feet, but right now he's on a 5-fight winning streak. And I don't believe Paul Craig has the offensive threat to hurt him on the feet. I don't. I think that Allen could avoid that. And I have Allen getting a finish in this fight. I think that Brendan Allen gets the finish. This is a 25-minute main event fight, and Brendan Allen is going to work his way to fighting for the gold down the line. He's the dark horse right now. He's ranked 10th. You got, of course, Khamzat Chimaev, but Brendan Allen's the new blood here. Okay, Dricus is fighting for the belt. Izzy's on a couple-year layoff now. Cannonier's had his opportunities, even though we have a new champ, but still, Cannonier will be back in the mix, but he's already fought Strickland as well. I don't know, it's a close fight. Thought Strickland won it. Vittori's been around the block forever. Paulo Costa can never show up. I don't know. Middleweight starting to shake up. Give me Brendan Allen to stifle the grappling attack and eventually land a nasty TKO type of victory, maybe down in the mat or maybe even on the feet. But I think he gets a knockout victory. Don't be shocked if he pulls off a sub. We've seen Paul Craig submitted as well. Again, Jimmy Crute pulling off that Kimura. Even though Craig has those submission skills, we've seen him submitted just once, but we've seen that happen. Allen is a major submission threat. Just submitted 3 fighters in a row, but I think Allen gets the knockout TKO. I see him getting that finish, and this will be huge for his career. All right, guys, that wraps up the video. Sorry, I kind of crashed hard at the end of this video, man, because my nose is dripping like a faucet. I'm sneezing 100 times over here. I'm having to pause my recording and redo these takes because it's bad. I don't want you guys listening to me sneeze on the mic like this. Don't worry, you're not going to catch nothing. But yeah, it hit me pretty hard here. Check this out. We got to hit you guys up with some closing thoughts. I want to say this, and this is a message you're going to be hearing regularly from me on this channel because I think it's very important. If any of you guys ever struggle from anxiety or any type of depression type symptoms, especially anxiety and just feeling antsy and whatnot, think about things like this. Sometimes, I know a lot of you guys know this, but sometimes it's sad, especially young folks that, they don't have as much life skills and as much wisdom throughout the years. And they don't realize when you're having those symptoms, it's just your body trying to let you know something. Okay. Don't bug out. It's simple. Your body is a fine-tuned machine, and it sends messages to you to let you know when you need to do certain things or if you're doing certain things that are not good, right? So if you're having anxiety, you're feeling antsy, there's a good chance that you need to get out of the house and be more active, go for jogs, work out, and it's a good sign you need to eat more healthy, all right? A lot of you guys aren't paying attention to what you're putting in your body. Even me, man, for years, even though I work out regularly and whatnot, I put a lot of different stuff in my body, and nowadays I try to pay a lot more attention to the ingredients and to the nutritional labels of what's in these foods. Even foods you think that are healthy and good are not. There's all these types of additives and all this crazy stuff. So try shaking things up, okay? Because I know some of you guys probably have horrible diets, and I know some of you guys probably are not active at all. Let's just be honest, right? So if you're feeling good and if you don't care to live to 90 and 100 and whatnot, if you don't want to have a super long life, if you're feeling good in the meantime, you're getting away with it. But if you start to hit a roadblock where you're feeling antsy, you're waking up, you're feeling antsy and whatnot, and you have anxiety, that's probably what's going on there. So just check that box off first and see if that doesn't cure things. All right, guys. So I'll just leave you with that. And we'll branch off that message in a variety of ways. There's other things I want to talk about too moving forward. But all right, guys, much love to you all. Please hit that like button, subscribe before you get out of here. All right, guys, signing out. Tell her.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.